Dr. J.K. Bajaj, who's going to present his views on NGOs as aliens to Indian society. He's Director, Center of Policy Studies and author of several books, including the landmark Indian Demographies. His areas of specialization include theoretical physics, scientific and technological traditions of India, and Indian society, economy and polity. He's a member of a governing body, National Council of Rural Institute, also a member of governing board's Center of Studies in Social Sciences. Please welcome Dr. J.K. Bajaj.
You picked up some old data, old bad. It's very late in the day and we have had discussed almost all issues. I don't know what I should be talking about. Are we going to have a discussion after this?
Yes,
or I do only benediction?
Depends on how you
Okay.
provoke. We can serve tea here. Can we serve tea here? You just check it. Just check.
Okay.
हो जाता है हमारे साथ कभी-कभी.
So, before I begin giving my formal talk, I will misuse the freedom given to me to speak to refer to two of the issues which have earlier come. One is about this freedom of Hindu temples. My colleague M.D. Srinivas is not there, he said much about it. Rajiv ji also mentioned. But I don't think we have a clear idea what this takeover of the Indian temples by the state means. I just want to recount one incident. About 25 years ago, in Chennai, I came across a pious person. He was living in Mylapore, and he had taken the sankalpa to build a temple for Anjaneya. And I don't know it from date to date. He started working on it. In about 5 years, he was able to build a really huge temple for Anjaneya in Nanganallur, Hanumanji. And it was a very big pratima, huge pratima. And that was the time when we had written that book on Annam Bahu Kurvita. And so that pious man decided that in that temple, like in the Gurudwaras, anybody who comes will be offered some food. And that's why I was interested in that temple. And the temple grew. A large number of the community around started participating in it. I remember having taken part in certain musical festivals there. All kinds of things used to happen around that temple. And last time when I went to Chennai, I was told that that temple has been taken over. That man who built the temple has been thrown out, and an executive officer of the government of Tamil Nadu now runs that temple. I thought this happened to temples which are coming from long tradition, have been historical, but a temple built by a community's effort in front of our eyes, with the whole community coming together. And certainly there's no recourse to it, because the law is that the government can just declare this temple is taken over. You can't go to any court on this. Now, if this had happened to a small NGO, that a small NGO, its account is closed, or its activities are taken over, we will hear so much of noise. The whole national press will be bursting, agitating over.
So it's a media problem also.
It's a mindset problem.
Yeah.
We don't see that temple as a voluntary activity, a legitimate voluntary activity of the civil society, and we see all that we do as so legitimate that even if we run it through foreign funding, nobody should be asking any questions.
Very good. Good. Very good.
Now, I was crying when I heard about the story about the temple. I didn't understand how it can happen.
Actually,
How it
sir,
can happen?
I just want to mention exactly something
Same
similar.
thing has happened to your Bangalore temple. I know the study of that. Please say.
No, in Indian Institute of Science, there's a temple built exactly like what you mentioned that has been taken over just
Yes,
5 months back, 6 months back.
I know about that temple also.
All
That's old.
shrines.
That's a long time.
No, but Vaishno Devi still was a temple created by generations. This is a temple created by our generation, and which goes. Another point which arose earlier about which is not very relevant perhaps, but I want to comment on that because keep collecting data on such things. There was repeatedly mentioned that the proselytization, conversion, Christianity really do not matter. I heard it about 30 minutes ago also. Because the numbers are small. But since this morning, we have been repeatedly hearing that in terms of the foreign money coming into India, the numbers are not small. Numbers of Christian money coming in for Christian work, as far as the government data goes, that number is not small by any stretch of imagination. And numbers are small of conversions when we look from a distance. When you go to Arunachal Pradesh, from district to district,
Nagaland.
Nagaland happened long ago. I'm mentioning Arunachal Pradesh intentionally because Arunachal Pradesh was one part of the northeast which up to 71 had zero Christianity. And in the just about 20 years, you go from district to district, everywhere the major tribal community, except for 2 or 3 who intend to be Hindus or intend to be Buddhists aggressively, whole communities within a period of 10 years you will see have been converted to. And I was in Arunachal Pradesh a couple of months ago and I attended one of the meetings, in fact I addressed one of the meetings of there in the Tirap district, and it happened to be in one of the temples of the indigenous faith. And women were crying that you people in the rest of India don't even know what is happening here. We are concerned about our traditions. We are concerned about the way we live. But there is no possibility to continue doing it. We don't know about these things, and we sit here and say that Christianity doesn't matter, Islam matters. To me, I don't understand what you...
Very good.
But these were not the issues I planned to talk about in my presentation today. I wanted to reflect on the issue of voluntary activity in a society. As Madhu has been repeatedly saying, voluntarism is extremely important. In fact, a human society is a human society because it carries out voluntary social activity. Perhaps the annual societies may also be doing it. But human society is human society because there is voluntary social activity in that society. Mahatma Gandhi used to say that voluntary activity is the expression of Swaraj in society. So voluntary activity is extremely important, and my problem with the NGOs, why I come to the meetings that Madhu Kishwar calls, is that NGO activity has taken the virtue out of voluntary activity. Much of what the NGOs do is actually in no sense social activity. Vaidyanathan ji was giving those figures about how many NGOs, how many organizations. Sometime I'll request Vaidyanathan ji to separate those organizations in terms of the activities they undertake. Because much of amongst these several lakhs that we talk about, a large number of them are just the extension wings of various of the government of India or the state governments or of the various international organizations. There are, I don't know how many Indian NGOs will be running KVKs. This is, KVK is an extension work of the Department of Agriculture. It has nothing to do with any social activity. It is a business, is a activity which is a scheme of the state which has to be implemented, and they are there to implement it. Similarly, there is this, my colleague mentioned about 2,500 crores, which comes from this AIDS activity. Again, it is a scheme, international scheme of certain things to be delivered up to the ground level, for which the NGOs are the delivery mechanism. There are like, how many NGOs will be helping out in clinical trials, in various kinds of other research activities. None of this is voluntary activity in the sense we talk about voluntary social activity. NGOs, by doing all this, have actually made the term voluntary activity dirty. And that is very serious problem, because you cannot have a society, there cannot be a good society where there is not voluntary activity, and doing voluntary activity has got confused with so many other things.
Seva, we need seva. Idea of seva.
What Dayal was talking about, for example, that there's need in the society, and you go and deliver it because you're concerned. You have empathy, and you go and concern. Nothing of this has got to do anything with the empathy with the society. So maybe Professor Vaidyanathan should be asked to separate out which organizations do what, and whenever we think of doing this legal arrangements or policy arrangements, we should be clear about what kind of activity for which we make what kind of policy. Because this NGO umbrella has become such a huge umbrella that within that you can keep doing anything. Having said that, I am actually pained because there is this kind of NGO activity. Even those organizations who genuinely want to work amongst the people are unable to do it. I'll give you two of the best examples. In fact, I keep looking around, are there NGO activists, voluntary activists, who have made a space in their society in which they work? And so I went to Matri Niketan, and one could not think of a better organization than Matri Niketan. Vishwanathan ji is almost the doyen of voluntary work. He is no more, but when I went there, I could spend time with him, and I asked him that you have almost 50 years you have been running this organization, and in this 50 years, is it now that you are within a society, is it acceptable enough within your society in which you are working that you can make it self-sufficient? He said, no, that can never happen. It cannot depend, it cannot be self-sufficient, it cannot live on the society around it. I said, but this is fairly rich area, it is Kerala, and people would be interested in things, the kind of things you are doing. Why can't we raise money from within this society to run this? Why does it have to be from Japan or from NCRI or from something? He says, no, there's absolutely no way any voluntary organization can work on funds raised from within the society. I said, okay, maybe not that. Maybe we take government funds, but let us get them through the panchayat so that there is some association of the local bodies, local society with what you are doing. If the funds come through that, then they'll be associated with it. They'll also be able to oversee it to some extent. He says, no, don't even talk about it, because these panchayats, they are so dirty. They don't understand what we are doing. This was the best of organizations. And I have great respect for Vishwanathan ji, is no more. Another organization I remember I went to, this was the in Sonbhadra district, late Prem Bhai and Ragini Bhai's place, great Gandhians. And there, after spending a day with them, I was there for 3-4 days. One day I just went to the forest around and to the villages. Dharmpalji was with me. And any tribal we talked to, I thought they will be, and I know that that organization has done a lot of work for the tribals, that area. They did important cases in the Supreme Court, they fought for them. When I talked to the tribals there, the response was, the Dayalji was saying that if you do hocus pocus, the local people scream and shout. They were all screaming and shouting. For them, Prem Bhai, in fact, in so many words, Prem Bhai is no more. But in the perception of that Agaria tribal, that Prem Bhai was really not much different than the collector there. And for the collector also, he had same kind of worry, same kind of words. In fact, sometime I'll record what that Agaria told me. But this has happened that because we take money from outside the society, and many times from foreign funding, we are not part of, that's what I meant when he said they are alien. We, as voluntary organizations, are unable to become part of the society in which we are working. And if we are alien to the society in which we are working, then it is not voluntary activity. Whatever else you may be doing, it is not voluntary social activity that you are doing. And NGOs, voluntary activity is what is important. NGOs are not important. Voluntary social activity in a society is important.
Very right.
Because that must go on. That must go on. And throughout the day we have heard, and if I am saying that the foreign funding should be banned, it is good for us as a society that it be banned. Because then we will find the right way of interacting with our society, a right way of doing voluntary work for our society, expressing empathy for our people. We will find the right way. Till we have this easy way of getting foreign money, there is no pressure on any one of us to actually see to it how to work within our society, not remain alien to our society in which we are working. There have been questions that can it be done at all. Throughout the day we have been discussing this, and my colleague mentioned it, Vaidyanathanji also mentioned it. There's so much of voluntary activity going on in this. The temple was voluntary, that I mentioned. And there will be hundreds of such temples, which are, or maybe thousands or millions, which are voluntarily doing various things. There will be much voluntary activity in the, they all mentioned this. I've gone to those villages where this Ekal Vidyalaya run. The presence of that single teacher, he cannot do very much there. I don't think he does anything very wrong either, as they was trying to suggest. Because the situation in those villages in Jharkhand is terrible. Well, I remember when I went to visit one of these villages, one of the Ekal Vidyalayas, I entered a hut and there was a adult young man lying on the floor with very high temperature and nobody to look after, because everybody was in the field or in the forest. And he had only malaria, and malaria is treatable, unlike AIDS, which need not be treated, but malaria is treatable. But but there was nothing that to reach chloroquine to that person. We do not have either NGOs or the government, and there was no reason why that person should have lied there for several days with that kind of fever. But the presence of a Ekal Vidyalaya teacher at least brings some hope there, that there is somewhere some concern that is there in some part of the society for those people. So there is large amount of voluntary activity of different kinds, which is going on, and I do not believe that it is not possible to raise funds from within society to do things that are important to them. Nandita Krishna was to come today. She sent a message this morning saying that Indian society does not give money for certain causes. And the cause she mentioned was animal welfare. Here also we mentioned several causes for which Indian society does not give money. And that is why we must take money, foreign money, in order to do animal welfare. No, if you were not to call it animal welfare, but to call it Goseva, how much money will be available within the society? And Goseva has always been shorthand for all kinds of welfare activities within society. Goseva, nobody, even Mahatma Gandhi, nobody believe treating guy worshipfully means only treating that cow worshipfully. It is a whole mindset which says that this is how you should interact with universe. And if instead of animal welfare we had thought of Goseva, I'm sure if you had used Goseva funds for raised from the society for tiger welfare, I don't think Indian society would have objected. Till you could have conveyed to them that this is also the same, it is part of Goseva. But then you will have to be that innovative. You will have to know about this society. You will have to know about this society but till you have foreign funds, there's no need to do all this. There will be, you can always run a separate tiger project, and there's really no need to worry about how this society thinks about things. There is somebody who said that amongst tribal people, there was some young, I am very happy, so many young people here, and were concerned, the young person was saying that if one has to do work amongst the tribals of Mizoram, who will give us money? Somebody answered it very well. But even if you wanted to, the Mizo people or Arunachal people, they have very alive tribal community life. They really don't need outsiders to help them. But even if you were to go and wanted to do it, and I know about Jhabua. I have met, and Beals are also known to be very difficult people. But I have gone with one of the persons who has worked there for 20 years. And he has not gone there that person has not gone to give them anything. He wanted to interact with them, live amongst them. And with him, I have gone to extremely interior villages where people will give you food, will treat you as members of the home. And because this man is present and has been going around for 10 years, the whole society has changed at a certain level. That was a society where it was said that the foreigner is outsider is completely unwelcome. The outsiders are beaten up. The outsiders are looted. And in that society, in the last 20 years, because somebody has been going around living amongst them, attitudes change so much that I must mention this, and then I think I should come towards the conclusion. There's a area of Jhabua which is the extreme, it's on the corner, the most interior. I went to that village, and we were 3-4 people walking, we were all tired. And by the time we reached that place, we were extremely tired, so we saw one house open and just walked into it. And when we walked into it, there was only the lady in the house. She didn't ask us any questions. All she did was, she picked up a charpai, spread it for us, brought water, and then started brooming the angan. Because outsiders have come, some atithya has to be done. And after doing all that, when we had taken water, settled down, then she asked us, "Bhai sab kahan se aaye hain?" कौन है? Not till then. And this is most tribal of the tribal areas. So this idea that Indian society does not know, they'll not give us resources, they'll not welcome us, they'll not work with us. It is till we do not find ways of working with them, till we are working only with the Ford Foundation. Till then, how will you be able to reach this society? And it is important, as Dayalji so passionately told us, it is important to work within this society. Indian state has not done as much as the state needs to do. The lot needs to be done there, and it's important to work with that society. But if you're doing only NGO activity, this gets neglected. Not only gets neglected, this gets a bad name. The reach becomes much less. So this idea that let us, not everything can be done, let us do this small thing. Let us decide that we will not do work in our society with foreign money. Perhaps we should not work with the government money also, but to begin with just this much, that we will not accept foreign money for doing voluntary work in Indian society. Okay, that I think we should. Incidentally, one more thing I'll say, and maybe close time. This coming of foreign money in India in the voluntary sector is not very old. It seems as if
70s.
I asked somebody when did it start, and he told me there was this secretary in the that time there was no rural development ministry, there was only Ministry of Agriculture, and there was one cell in it of rural development, and there was this secretary H.C. Sharma perhaps, and he went abroad and he realized there's so much of money floating around, and we should do something for with this money to do some rural development activity in India. So he came back and he set up within the ministry, he set up a society. It's called PADI. You would have heard of that. That's a Public Action Development India. And this was a government society. Some director of the government used to be the director of it. And it started negotiating between the foreign agencies and the Indian voluntary agencies. At that time, NGO term had not really come.
Agencies at that time.
Viewers.
Used to be an organization.
And most of this, though there was foreign money, it was coming through this single channel of PADI, it was coming through. And slowly the various voluntary agencies started developing their own contacts abroad. So it would have happened in late 70s that actually foreign money in the serious sense by direct involvement of the NGOs with the foreign agencies start coming. And so if we cannot stop foreign funding altogether, maybe we go a little one step back and create an agency like PADI. Let's all negotiate through that. But I will prefer that it's closed. That's the
सरकार तो सोना छूती है तो मिट्टी बना
one more observation. Incidentally, H.C. Sharma is supposed to have convinced Jayaprakash Narayan also that this money is not too bad and it can be taken. And Jayaprakash Narayan is supposed to have commented that this kind of foreign money can spoil everything, but we have to take it. That was the.
I think we will
One more. I have been, just 1 minute. I have been wondering, I was discussing with the colleague yesterday, that where did this idea of organized international agencies sending money for development work elsewhere, when did it start? For voluntary work elsewhere?
Swami Vivekananda went abroad to get money only.
Personally.
Let's finish. That's different.
I think
Wait,
let me close it. Let me close it. I think the only antecedent we can see is the church missionary activity. There were societies formed all over the world to do missionary activity in the Northeast, missionary activity in Malaya, missionary activity there, from where this money started flowing in. And this is also recent. This is also recent, and it is not surprising that, as was said in the morning, even now much of the money which comes to these channels comes from the church organizations there, because they are the original organizations which started this kind of funding of good works abroad, elsewhere, because good works are normally done within your own society all the time. So let me close this. Only I want to make a very passionate plea. Do everything that Madhu Kishwar is saying, all the 6 things, but one of them let us do, certainly, let us make a consensus for stopping foreign funding for social activity in India.
Good,
That-
thank you.
I